The Bermuda Triangle, said to be a mysterious vortex that claims ships, planes, and lives at will.
Something really strange is going on here, guys.
Some are never found.
Well, we searched, found absolutely nothing.
Others turn up as headstones on the ocean floor. The Bermuda Triangle ranks alongside UFOs and alien abduction as one of the most feared supernatural phenomena on Earth. Now, we will try to unravel its secrets and find out what lies behind the myth by flying into the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. This is the million square kilometers of Atlantic Ocean known as the Bermuda Triangle. Weather conditions here can wreak havoc for planes and ships. A single Bermuda Triangle hurricane can contain more energy than 10,000 nuclear bombs. Ocean swells can climb to 15 meters, the height of a 5-story building. And winds can reach 320 kilometers per hour, 4 times stronger than gale force. Even in calm weather, this triangle of water stretching between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico is known to swallow victims. Some have disappeared without a trace, no SOS, and no survivors to tell their tales. Others rest in the graveyard of ships and aircraft that lies beneath the waves. Firm statistics do not exist, but there are ships, planes, and people that have vanished here with no explanation. In 1918, the supply ship USS Cyclops left Barbados. Shortly afterwards, all contact ceased. And in 1963, the SS Marine Sulphur Queen made a routine call from near Key West and was never heard of again. Scientists insist there is nothing unusual about the Triangle waters, and they are probably right. Yet the legends of this place have only grown with time. So where did this myth about this stretch of water come from? After World War II came the dawn of the Cold War and the terrifying prospect of nuclear conflict. Uncertainty and fear helped foster inexplicable myths that flourished in movies and popular culture. Unidentified flying objects were reported over American soil. Alien abductions were blamed for numerous disappearances. And to the people of the time, these far-fetched tales seemed within the realm of possibility. These tensions of the sci-fi age spawned book and newspaper reports of supposed disappearances and supernatural happenings, just as the number of air and sea journeys and resulting casualties was dramatically increasing. By the mid-1960s, a writer for Argosy magazine coined the term Bermuda Triangle, elevating the myth to even greater heights. But what is the truth behind the myth? Theorists, scientists, eccentrics, experts, and eyewitnesses have all been drawn to the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Paul Vance is one man who believes in the myth. He claims to have seen something strange on a boating trip, possibly a UFO.
My friend Doug Gerd and I were leaving West Palm Beach, started watching one particular white light that came across the sky, and then it stopped. This was not an airplane, it was a single white light. And after it stopped, a cloud just appeared underneath it. It was spinning. It kind of looked like a tornado, but it wasn't that long as a tornado. Just almost at the same moment that I noticed the light stop, my engine started running rough on my boat.
Paul Vance's story is impossible to prove or disprove. But science does offer logical explanations for many Bermuda Triangle mysteries. One of the most commonly held theories revolves around the weather. Extreme weather around the world affects shipping routes and flights, and the Bermuda Triangle is no exception. It's home to some of the most fearsome weather on the face of the planet. Could such extremes of weather account for the many disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle? The first and most obvious candidate is the hurricane. These monstrous swirling masses of rain and cloud create the largest storms on Earth, hundreds of kilometers across, with winds up to 320 kilometers an hour. A hurricane spells disaster for any craft in its path. Their power can surprise even experienced hurricane hunters, like storm photographer Jim Edds, who has felt the full force of a hurricane in the Bermuda Triangle.
I was filming the downstairs of a house that had been gutted out by the waves, and I moved to across the street, and as I was going there, a wave came and clipped me from behind.
Edds almost lost his life as the force of the impact snatched him away. He was dragged 90 meters before he finally managed to escape. The strength and direction of every hurricane is monitored in detail by scientists at the National Hurricane Center in Miami. But despite their efforts, Mother Nature still springs surprises. The awesome power of storms such as Hurricane Andrew in August 1992 can shock even weather experts like Jim Lushine, sometimes with heartbreaking results.
I was at the Hurricane Center working, looking at the satellite pictures, putting out the hurricane local statements. My wife, who had lived in the house for 20 years along with my two daughters, actually talked to me on the phone and said, "Jim, is this going to miss us? We think the wind is not very strong here right now." And I said, "No, I'm sorry, honey, this is it."
When Hurricane Andrew reached the edge of the Bermuda Triangle, its full fury hit their home in Dade County.
I hadn't heard anything for several hours of what was happening. Turned the corner around the block where my house was, and my house really wasn't anymore.
Its immense destructive power makes the hurricane one of the most studied weather systems on Earth, and possibly the most rational explanation for the tragic events occurring within the Bermuda Triangle. Every fact we learn about hurricanes may help dismantle the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. From space, we watch their every move, while here on Earth, some scientists deliberately fly into the heart of hurricanes to see what they can learn. One such man is Robert Rogers.
I do research on hurricanes, take measurements in the storms, we fly into the storms. I work with computers to try to better understand how hurricanes work, how they form, where they'll track, what causes them to change intensity, produce rainfall, those sorts of issues. First thing you need is a body of warm water. The water forms essentially sort of the fuel for the hurricane. That's what it needs to sustain itself, to drive the energy, which then drives the winds essentially of the storm. Another thing that you need is you need winds that are favorable so that the storm can preserve itself. If you have winds that are blowing from different directions at different altitudes, for example, then the storm can't really maintain itself.
These days, satellite technology can warn travelers inside the triangle of an approaching hurricane. Along with better navigational systems, this may explain why there have been fewer disappearances as the years have gone on. But hurricanes cannot provide the whole answer. The hurricane season only lasts for 6 months, from June to November, and many disappearances have happened outside that time. Other natural phenomena could be part of the problem. Waterspouts, tornadoes at sea, are common off the coasts of southern Florida, and they too can be deadly. This storm over Miami evolved from a tornado into a waterspout with winds of up to 175 kilometers per hour.
Down here in South Florida, we can get them quite often. A very fascinating phenomenon. You can often get several waterspouts all in a row that you can watch. You know, they probably last for 5 or 10 minutes or so.
Waterspouts can appear without warning.
I know that there's some severe weather out there that can affect ships. Like you can have a waterspout out there. Say you had some people inside eating lunch. Well, you can get a column of air spinning and it comes down right over them and they wouldn't even know it.
But although they are dangerous and unpredictable, waterspouts are too weak to sink big ships or bring down high-flying aircraft. So what about more familiar weather events like thunderstorms? Could they have contributed to the myth of the Bermuda Triangle? Thunderstorms evolve when warm, humid air rises to meet cooler air. Regions like the Bermuda Triangle, from which warmed air perpetually rises, are perfect incubators. At sea, thunderstorms form rapidly, unleashing their full destructive power onto unsuspecting planes and ships. And with thunderstorms comes lightning, a constant threat in this part of the world. Dave Ease has been a dive boat captain for Stewart Cove Diving in Nassau for 14 years. He dives the waters of the Bermuda Triangle almost every day.
We came across a lightning storm. We had to pass pretty close to it, and you could feel every time the lightning strike or you hear the thunder, you just know to let go of the steering wheel, because if you held on to it, you'll feel a little jolt. And after a little bit of time, you could hear the antenna sound like a bunch of hornets in it, just buzzing. That's just because of the static electricity building up in it.
Lightning can be disorientating, even deadly. But larger vessels and planes are usually protected and could ride out a single strike. Like waterspouts and thunderstorms, lightning appears to offer no more than a partial explanation of the myth. And despite all such logical explanations, there is one disappearance that has arguably done more than any other to fuel the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. On a fine day at the end of the Second World War, 5 naval aircraft carrying 14 young airmen vanished without a trace. The disappearance of US Navy Flight 19 captured the public imagination as the greatest of all Bermuda Triangle mysteries. The loss of so many men was all the more tragic because it happened just months after the end of the war. These photographs show the crew of Flight 19. They would become the victims of one of America's greatest mysteries, bringing international attention to the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. Wild and weird legends have developed around Flight 19 since its disappearance. But what are the facts? Perhaps no one knows more about the infamous tragedy than Bermuda Triangle expert, enthusiast, and author Jean Coussard.
In terms of the triangle, I consider myself the person who bothered to write the biography on it. All the mysteries about it, the facts instead of the fiction, instead of the legend, instead of the hearsay.
Coussard has examined all the known historical records about Flight 19 and listened to first-hand accounts of witnesses from the time. Official records reveal that instrument failure was the first sign of trouble for Flight 19. But what really happened? And if we retrace the steps of the flight, could we learn anything new? For perhaps the first time, we will fly the exact planned route of the doomed Flight 19 in an authentic World War II Avenger aircraft. Under the leadership of experienced pilot Charles Taylor, Flight 19 originally took off from what is now Fort Lauderdale International Airport. The planes, 4 of them carrying a crew of 3 and one with just 2 aviators on board, were to fly a 4-sided route from Fort Lauderdale to Bimini, Great Harbor Cay, the island of Grand Bahama, and then back to base. The weather was good, and the journey seemed simple. The first leg was to take them towards Bimini, around 90 kilometers away from their Fort Lauderdale base, with some torpedo practice over Chicken and Hen Shoal en route. The plan shows them continuing east on a compass heading of 91 degrees for 107 kilometers. Then they were supposed to turn north-northwest for 117 kilometers. The final turn to the left would have put them on a direct course for their Fort Lauderdale home base. Records show that they made the first 3 legs of their journey, but they never made the final leg. They lost contact at 7:04 p.m., never to be heard from again. No remains were ever found. It was a tragic journey for the crewmen of Flight 19 and the friends and loved ones they left behind. Obie O'Brien, an ex-Navy pilot war hero who signed up the year after the disaster, will pilot our Avenger bomber, a plane identical to those of Flight 19.
In 1950, I was flying the Corsair in a Corsair squadron, and we went to Korea on the USS Boxer. I flew 40-some missions, and during that time, I was awarded the Air Medal.
Obie is from the same generation as the young and dedicated servicemen of Flight 19, who would have been grateful to have survived the dangers of the Second World War. To make our flight truly authentic, the plane will navigate using the same basic method as would have been used by Flight 19, steering by compass and watching the islands below. We take off from the same Fort Lauderdale runway as Flight 19, and at the same time of day, 2:10 in the afternoon, although weather conditions for us are slightly better. 60 years earlier on Flight 19, the first sign of trouble came when Lieutenant Charles Taylor radioed that he was uncertain of his position. Jim Ward was a radio operator on a nearby naval ship that day and heard the radio transmissions of the fateful flight.
We heard the flight leader come in and call the tower and ask them if they would put their radar on and get a fix on him because he wasn't quite sure where he was.
It appears that Taylor believed he was over the Florida Keys, an island chain stretching 160 kilometers into the Gulf of Mexico. It's more likely that he was in fact almost 320 kilometers northeast.
So the tower came back in about 15-20 minutes and said, "We can't find you on the radar. Do you have any idea where you are?" He says, "Well, I think I've seen some islands." He said, "Well, can you identify the islands?"
Exact transcripts of his radio messages reveal that Taylor was experiencing problems.
Both my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm on the land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale.
After flying without incident, our plane suddenly runs into problems. Amazingly, it's at almost exactly the same time as Taylor announced his instruments were malfunctioning, around 3:50 p.m. The turn and slip instrument in our Avenger starts to perform erratically, making it harder for our pilot to perform smooth and efficient turns.
Let's turn and fly east 2 degrees. We're going too damn far north instead of east. If there is anything, we wouldn't see it.
It was now 3 hours since they'd taken off. They had enough fuel for at least another 3 hours. The crewmen started to argue, and another Flight 19 pilot, Captain Edward Powers, tried to take control and turn them to the west.
Damn it! If we would just head west, we would get home!
In our recreation of the flight, the next hour passes smoothly, and Great Harbor Cay is safely in sight below. We make a left turn and head north for Grand Bahama, the most northerly point of our flight, and another hour's flying time away. This is where Flight 19 should have turned west and headed home. But by now, Flight 19 could have been disorientated, with their fuel dangerously low and darkness fast approaching.
You didn't get far enough east. How long have we been going east? We're now heading 270 west!
Now, incredibly, another problem affects our recreation of Flight 19. Our chase plane pilot, flying alongside us to take film of the Avenger, announces his aircraft's turn and slip indicator is also malfunctioning. Exactly the same instrument which became erratic on our plane. It has completely frozen.
Something really strange is going on here, guys.
What exactly is happening? And more importantly, why? We are now almost 2 hours into our recreated Flight 19, and both of our planes have suffered instrument failures. It's just possible that the instruments were already faulty prior to takeoff. But whatever the explanation, we all have an eerie feeling as we make our final turn west and head for Fort Lauderdale, the leg of the journey that could have saved the lives of Flight 19. Flight 19 never made that final turn west. The 5 planes were doomed to fly further and further to the east, with rapidly emptying gas tanks, over empty ocean, and in growing darkness.
We will head 270 until we hit the beach or run out of gas. When the first man gets down to 10 gallons of gas, we will all land in the water together. Does everyone understand that?
And that was the last that we heard on the radio. They asked him how much gas he had left. He said about a half hour, 20 minutes. We waited till that half hour went by, and there was no more activity on the radio. We knew they were down someplace, but we didn't know where. So they sent out all the boats and all the planes that they had available to go look for them.
Navy rules dictate that all the planes should ditch together in such a crisis. Nobody knows what actually happened to the planes of Flight 19, and why not a single crewman, life jacket, or piece of wreckage from the 5-6-ton planes was ever found.
I could almost feel the presence of those 14 brave men who perished 60 years ago, and it's a very sobering feeling.
The disappearance of Flight 19 and the media frenzy that ensued solidified the legend of the Bermuda Triangle and still remains its best-known mystery. But these 5 planes of 1945 were by no means the last to go missing. On December the 27th, 1948, a DC-3 took off from San Juan in Puerto Rico, bound for Miami. It disappeared without trace. On August the 28th, 1963, 2 huge KC-135 aerial refueling military planes crashed on a return flight to Homestead Air Base near Miami. Flying 150 meters apart, they simultaneously fell out of the sky from an altitude of around 10,900 meters. These 2 planes did not disappear. Wreckage was found, But no one could explain the cause of the catastrophe. Had the two planes collided, or was it a simple case of pilot error? We may never know the exact truth, and this flight too has passed into the annals of Bermuda Triangle legend. Leaving no stone unturned in our quest to unravel what lies behind the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, we look at the likelihood of mechanical or pilot failures. Could human error and spatial disorientation be the reason why some planes disappear? Pilots flying over the ocean can easily lose their sense of position and even confuse which way is up, down, left or right. Humans are not designed to travel at high speed above the ground. Even on a clear day, it's possible to become disorientated and confuse sea for sky, especially when light is reflecting off the ocean surface, which is common in this part of the world. In mist and fog, the problem can become even worse. And if it's no longer clear which way is up and which down, it could be very easy to fly straight into the ocean. One person who understands the dangers of pilot disorientation is Florida flying instructor Carol Collins. She thinks there could be a very simple explanation for the legend of the Bermuda Triangle.
On a day when it's more hazy, you're going to have a much less distinct horizon. If we look out this way, we do still have a line of the horizon, but you can see that it's not quite as clear as it was on the other side. I'm going to put the plane in a bit of a bank. And right now we're entering slowly into a climbing turn. And if you notice, you're not really feeling anything. I could very gradually get this airplane into a descent. And if I don't do a very rapid descent where your ears are starting to pop on you, you're never even going to know that you're in that descent.
Collins isn't a believer. In her opinion, many of the aircraft accidents in the Bermuda Triangle can be attributed to stress, overtiredness, and disorientation. But what about the disappearances of ships? Could human error also be at work here? Weather scientist Chris Lancy agrees that there is an explanation for most incidents.
Not as a scientist, but as a resident, I would have to ascribe a lot of the problems ascribed to the Bermuda Triangle as just human error. It's a lot of people that do stupid things and they get caught in a stupid area and then they want to blame it on somebody else. So knowing human nature, knowing how many idiots live in the area, some of that's just going to be bad judgment.
One organization has unique first-hand knowledge of ships and boats getting into trouble in the Bermuda Triangle, the U.S. Coast Guard. They're involved in rescues all around the United States. Chief Petty Officer John Guthrie is a crew member of a Miami Station Coast Guard helicopter and a proud member of the busiest sea rescue service in the world. He knows exactly how easy it is to become disorientated.
Sometimes you get a haze, and if it's a real calm day, you'll get the water looking like the sky and the sky looking like the water.
According to the U.S. Coast Guard, in a review of aircraft and vessel losses in the area over the last 60 years, there has been nothing to suggest that casualties were the result of anything other than human error or mechanical failure. On an average day, the U.S. Coast Guard saves 11 lives and assists more than 130 people in distress. In recent years, a higher percentage of those needing help have been safely rescued because of a new, more accurate generation of a rescue device called an EPIRB, an emergency position indicating radio beacon. Since their introduction in 1982, EPIRBs have been credited with saving more than 14,000 lives worldwide. Thousands of rescues are made in the Bermuda Triangle every year, and EPIRBs play a vital role in locating distressed vessels.
They can take this with them into the water if their boat sinks and activate it. And what this does, it sends a signal to the satellites, which has a code for each individual 406 EPIRB.
Officially, the U.S. Coast Guard doesn't recognize the existence of the Bermuda Triangle. But there are still cases where the Coast Guard has been unable to find a missing vessel, even when it's been carrying an EPIRB. Most Bermuda Triangle disappearances are probably caused by freak weather, human error, or simple mechanical failure. In some unlucky cases, it could be a combination of all three. One bizarre story involved a Miami-based property developer, Bruce Gernon. Shortly after takeoff on a routine flight from Andros Island in the Bahamas to Miami, Gernon claims to have noticed a lenticular cloud. These are normally seen over mountains, but this one hovered a few kilometers offshore over the Great Bahama Bank. Gernon claims the anvil heads on the clouds formed into a tunnel with blue sky at the end of it. As he flew into the cloud, he noticed brilliant flashes of light, but no actual forks of lightning. The whole cloud appeared to be charged with energy. He also claims that strange lines appeared inside the tunnel, rotating very slowly anti-clockwise. The lines ran the entire length of the tunnel, which he estimated to be at least 15 kilometers.
And it should have taken over 3 minutes to reach the other end of the tunnel. But it only took about 20 seconds.
Gernon felt a sensation like zero gravity, and when he looked back, he could see contrails forming on the wingtips. He watched the tunnel slowly collapse into a slit. Gernon believes electromagnetic energy can cause a unique electronic fog around a plane.
And that was the most mysterious part of this flight. I wasn't flying through the fog. I was flying with the fog. It's a different kind of fog. It has an electromagnetic energy within it.
Then, Gernon claims, the fog began to disperse, and a few seconds later, he saw he was over Miami. When he looked at his watch, he was amazed to find he had only been airborne for 33 minutes, on a flight which should have taken over an hour. Gernon's story of a weird electronic fog surrounding his plane in the Bermuda Triangle is so bizarre it defies a simple physical explanation. But another man attracted to the triangle myth, a self-styled amateur scientist, is researching what he claims to be a similar phenomenon. In a makeshift laboratory in his Vancouver apartment, John Hutchinson claims to have practiced levitation and metal bending using an electromagnetic force he calls the Hutchinson effect. He believes he has witnessed the same mysterious electronic fog as Gernon. Some people dismiss Hutchinson as an eccentric dreamer. But there are those who believe he is a pioneer of science.
My qualifications is basically, I just made it to grade 8. I have no qualifications whatsoever. The metallic myths that I created in my own research, which resembles Bruce Gernon's special electronic fog, and I'm comparing my notes to metallic mist, and what I seen, this ball of metallic dense, grayish white material appearing out of nowhere. I know there's a correlation between the two of them.
Hutchinson's story began in May 1980, while he was experimenting with equipment in his small apartment. He says he noticed slight movements in objects near an electric field he was generating. He tried moving objects into different areas of the field, then suddenly met with success, making a 27-kilogram cannonball levitate above the table's surface.
With the early experiments I was doing, it captured a lot of interest from people from all walks of the scientific community, and that's the levitation, the metal turning all kind of strange and mushy. And people felt that there was a lot of applications for this technology that I discovered.
Hutchinson claims to be able to levitate objects and warp metal using a combination of radio waves and powerful million-volt electromagnetic fields. It's impossible to know if he has in fact found a way to neutralize the force of gravity. The established scientific community does not seem to be taking his claims seriously, and because the proof is films made by Hutchinson himself, there is no way to verify his claims. Hutchinson says that the effects he has filmed are powered by an incredible energy source that he claims is somehow related to the as yet unproven scientific theory of zero-point energy.
A cubic foot of it can actually power the Earth's energy needs for 100 years.
Scientists say that even the concept of harnessing zero-point energy is completely theoretical, but Hutchinson still believes he may have unlocked this hidden force, and he thinks that such energy may occur naturally inside the Bermuda Triangle, unleashing similar effects to those he says he's witnessed in his makeshift laboratory. He believes these zero-point forces could be powerful enough to warp and flex aircraft bodies and even split ships' hulls wide open. Hutchinson believes that his amateur experiments could shed light on the forces at play in the Bermuda Triangle, but to date they have not been verified or replicated. No ship or plane wreck is known to have exhibited the symptoms he describes. His theories of unlocking energy by electromagnetism would seem to perpetuate the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, but shed no light on the circumstances surrounding actual events. But other triangle theorists also link the forces of magnetism with the Bermuda Triangle legend. The Earth is like a giant magnet surrounded by the magnetosphere, fields of magnetic force stretching from pole to pole. One effect of that magnetic field is sometimes visible in the form of the aurora borealis, or northern lights. The fluttering lights occur when particles that are swept towards the poles by the magnetic field collide with the Earth's atmosphere. The magnetic field also empowers a compass, the most vital of all navigation tools before global positioning satellites. Compasses point to the planet's magnetic north, a location that is only rarely aligned with the North Pole. This is a fact for which navigators have learned to compensate. But it's long been known that there is something unusual about the Bermuda Triangle, which some people have tried to suggest might cause navigation problems in the area. It's one of the places on Earth where magnetic and true north have actually lined up. Another such region, off the coast of Japan, also has a somewhat mysterious reputation for lost ships. It's hard to imagine how this well-known alignment of the magnetic and true poles could cause problems for a trained navigator. But some further evidence has been discovered about the Earth's magnetic field. Evidence that the magnetosphere over the Bermuda Triangle is changing more rapidly than anywhere else on the planet. In this respect, the Bermuda Triangle is unlike any other place on Earth. And the proof comes from outer space. In 1999, a NASA rocket launched a tiny 60-kilogram satellite built by scientists in Denmark. Since then, the Ørsted satellite has passed over the waters of the Bermuda Triangle more than 25,000 times, measuring the strength of the Earth's magnetic field.
We have observed that the main field, which we term the field coming from the Earth's fluid core, has changed substantially in the Bermuda region.
The satellite gathers data to measure effects deep inside the planet. The Earth's core is probably solid iron, but it is thought that the magnetosphere comes from the movement of a liquid outer core spinning like a giant dynamo. A group of Danish scientists compared their data with similar readings taken 20 years ago by the US MagSat satellite. It was the first time they had looked specifically at the Bermuda Triangle region, and they saw some dramatic results.
Comparing the two magnetic fields from the MagSat mission and the Ørsted mission shows that in the Bermuda region, the field has decreased by about 6% during 20 years.
The planet's magnetic field is weakening more rapidly in the Bermuda Triangle region than anywhere else on Earth. It's a fascinating finding, but what could be causing the change? Ocean and air currents have changed little in centuries, and the Earth's crust has taken millennia to form. So the Danish scientists believe the most likely cause of the magnetic field's decrease has to lie deeper in the Earth's fiery liquid core. They speculate that the magnetic changes could come from violent turbulence, equivalent to a storm, deep in the molten iron of the core, directly under the Bermuda Triangle. Could the recording of magnetic field decreases offer an answer as to why the Bermuda Triangle has earned itself such a fearsome reputation? If the magnetic field in the Bermuda Triangle has changed so much, could it be affecting navigation systems or weather patterns? And if there is a vast swirling storm buried deep in the molten rock below the Bermuda Triangle seabed, could that in some mysterious way affect sailors and aviators or their ships and planes? These seem unlikely scenarios. Earth's magnetic field has varied greatly over millions of years and is still changing now. It's hard to imagine how the slight extra rate of change in the Bermuda region could in any way affect navigation, ships and planes, or the people who crew them. But these questions continue to be posed by people who would believe in the triangle myth. In setting out to solve the mystery of why myths surround the Bermuda Triangle, we have perhaps raised more questions than answers. What we do know is that it's possible to explain many of the past mysteries. The tragic mystery of Flight 19 was probably caused by human error.
There have been a lot of ships and airplanes lost in the Bermuda Triangle, but there's been a lot of ships and airplanes lost in other areas of the world, too.
I really think there's something there, but I don't have the answer.
UFOs have apparently been seen, but seem to be an unlikely explanation.
After seeing what I saw that night, I believe there is something to the Bermuda Triangle.
Ships that have sunk without trace could have fallen victim to extreme weather.
I know that there's some severe weather out there.
And planes could have disappeared off the face of the map as a result of the spatial disorientation of their pilots.
But a lot of it is simply due to pilot stress and fatigue.
We've heard one man's stories of time distortion and electronic fog, and another's seemingly impossible claims of levitation and metal-bending electromagnetic forces.
A cubic foot of it can actually power the Earth's energy needs for 100 years.
And most intriguing of all, we know that the Earth's magnetic field is weakening more rapidly over the Bermuda Triangle than anywhere else on the planet. But after all our research, no one reason satisfactorily accounts for the triangle's strange reputation. The Bermuda Triangle has held on to its secrets and is destined to remain one of the world's greatest mysteries.